Hey there, everybody. I know it's been a while, but welcome back to Letterboxing with Commentatoring Nerd. I have a brand new episode for you guys and a new project that I'm starting, and I want to share with you guys a whole lot today. So let's get into it. I actually have a lot to cover today because I do have some cleanup and housekeeping to do to talk to you guys about how this show is going to go moving forward and why I haven't been around lately. Um, so let's just get to the why are there delays and what did I drop the ball on so far as this show and what I promised as far as programming goes. So over the last few weeks, it goes back to before Thanksgiving, and even before that, really, it was kind of building already. But I caught two different of the what do they call it? Triple demic, whatever that they're calling it. The three things. I didn't catch COVID, but I probably got RSV, and I definitely got the flu, and I was already not feeling it the one week, which I canceled the show or postponed the show, and then the following week after I caught the flu, I definitely was not feeling it still. Um, and just kind of the fatigue has kind of held on there ever since. And I've been really in recovery mode for a few weeks now. Um, Obviously, the worst symptoms were maybe over Thanksgiving weekend, but it takes a lot of out of you, and I was already dealing with burnout in lots of different areas, so just kind of all that additive uh, things all those additive things kind of made it where I was not feeling it as far as making this show. Honestly, I am still sort of forcing myself to do this show, but I am still really excited to do at least one more big project before maybe I go through another hiatus. So let's just get to it. What I did drop the ball on is Hefty Helpings of Hitchcock. So that was the project I was working on in November. I did finish and watch all the movies and review all the movies. I've tweeted about it and posted reviews in different places to kind of catalog what I thought. But I didn't want to just completely drop the ball. So I do want to cover here at the beginning of the show um, what were my final thoughts on the last nine movies. I did for that. I'm going to go very fast though. They're going to be very brief, whatever, and then I'll just link the reviews, and you guys can let the reviews speak for themselves. Otherwise, it'll just be pretty quick blurbs as far as what I thought about each movie and why I rated it what I did, and then kind of a quick summary of the project overall and what I thought about doing all those Hitchcock movies at once, basically. Um, but the bulk of this episode is going to be the first episode of my years in review series. Basically, we're going to be doing decades for the rest of the year, kind of carrying over into the new year. I figure it's a good time to do it. We're getting to the end of the year. We're already thinking about uh, like what are our favorite movies from this year currently, which will be the end of this whole stretch. But this week we're going to be starting with the 1980s. I'm not doing every decade. I'm doing the ones where I have the most knowledge or I feel like I have the most to say about more easily. At some point in the future, I'll probably go back to earlier decades and make episodes or some sort of commentary on those things. But I'm starting with the 1980s, going to go to the 1990s, 2000s, 2010s, which the 2010s will be short because I've already shared a lot of that with people before. But I'm still going to kind of represent those that 2010s top 100. So basically, each week I'm going to go through each year of the decade and give my top 10s or whatever I feel like is worth sharing as far as my favorite movies from each year. And then for each decade, I'm going to be doing a top 100 list, which In the 80s, it'll be a little easier, as you'll find out. In the 90s, it's going to be very, very hard for me because I'm a 90s kid, and I have a lot of also nostalgia favorites that like to work their ways in there, and I'm definitely going to lift up maybe some sillier movies that were some of my favorites from when I was a kid, and they're still some of my favorites now, just from that nostalgia factor. And definitely 90s is going to be very affected by that. The 2000s will be after that. Yeah. So basically, we're going to be doing a lot of top 100s. It's really difficult, and yes, they're going to be ranked. It's not going to be just a collection of favorite 100s and you figure out which I think is the best. I'm actually ranking them 100 through 1 for each year. I've done this for the 2010s. It was one of the first things I did when I got Letterboxd and shared it a whole bunch, and I love doing it. And I'm doing that now for the next few weeks and sharing those lists with you. So this week's going to be all about the 1980s once we get to it. So let's get into the show. I need to talk about Hefty Helpings of Hitchcock. So let's do it. So what I have left for Hefty Helpings of Hitchcock, there's 9 movies. I originally planned to do 13 movies for this project, and I did watch 13 movies for the project and reviewed them. So here's the remaining 9 that I have not gotten to talk about. All right, Shadow of the Doubt. I gave it 3.5 stars out of 5 and gave it a like. This movie was a little bit of a mixed bag for me. Basically, what I ran into was the idolatry the family has for Uncle Charlie in the beginning. Um, Maybe it's just because I was watching House of Dragon and Game of Thrones sort of stuff. But there was some, and also Alfred Hitchcock's direction of relationships and um, women and men relationships is not the best as I've seen going through this series. Uh, so in the beginning of Shadow of Doubt, there's some really like awkward ways that both young Charlie, this I guess she's a young adult, maybe like 18, 19. I can't remember how old she actually is. But anyway, how she kind of looks up to Uncle Charlie more than, it feels like more than just an uncle. It's like a little bit too like infatuated in a sense. And even his sister, which is her mom, also has this kind of like crazy reverence for him. Um, and that's just sort of the stuff that brings it down. Also, there's an extra love interest that has to get thrown in for young Charlie for whatever reason. Her story is already compelling enough because of the thriller aspect and the mystery aspect of this and how she kind of slowly gains suspicion about what's going on, and that all that stuff is brilliantly uh, well done, and the way things devolve as the movie goes along and gets more tense is some of Hitchcock's best tension building and thrilling scenes. uh, I also, young Charlie is kind of a weird, awkward sort of person that you're not sure how much you like her, but she definitely not just grows on you, but she gains a certain level of strength as the movie goes along that she maybe didn't have before. She had a naivete about her in the beginning, and she definitely essentially grows up as this movie uh, unfolds, and I really like the arc that she goes on. And the actress does a great job. So those are the things that I liked, and there was just some I don't know, weird relationship things that kind of were drawbacks. So then we move on to Lifeboat. I also gave this 3.5 out of 5 stars. This is just my kind of movie. It's a bottle movie, or I guess rather a ship in a bottle movie. I've always had a soft spot for movies that take place in one scene, and it's about people kind of arguing or trying to figure. In this case, it's a survival story, but if you think to like 12 Angry Men or other things where it's very conversation driven and characters having to figure out how to work together and uh, work against how they're different and their biases. And this is a really interesting plot where this basically crashed. Basically, these survivors of um, uh, a merchant marine's ship gets attacked by a German U-boat during World War II, and they're stranded, and they're on they've on this lifeboat, but they also happen to pick up one of the Germans who were on the U-boat that sank them. So there's that extra layer of kind of mistrust going on, and it's just really makes for a really great setup for a movie. And there's some little weird stuff here and there, but for the most part, I think the characters are really colorful. I think it's William Bendix who plays Gus is I think definitely my favorite character in little story arc within the movie. He's sort of a tragic character, but also is pretty funny also in certain ways. And I just really like how well-rounded this character is. You feel for him, but he's also like kind of the glue of the group for a lot of it because I have to kind of go like work together to take care of him, but then also I feel like they each have interesting interactions with him that um, that make the movie even better. So that was definitely my favorite part of Lifeboat. So yes, I actually gave it 4 stars out of 5. I said I gave it 3.5. It's 4 stars out of 5, and I gave it a like. So let's move on. Now we're to Notorious. Going into this project, I knew this is one of the highest rated Alfred Hitchcock movies. Um, I give it a 3.5 out of 5 stars, and I'll talk about why I'm lower than other people. Um, uh, but yeah, basically, I was expecting a lot from this movie, and there is a lot of really impressive stuff, especially in the spycraft area. I really like the suspense and kind of the situation that Ingrid Bergman character is in, not with all the relationship stuff and how people judge her, but actually how she has to be you know an operative, an intelligence operative, uh, kind of um, yeah, having to get into a marriage to basically do her job, and all of it is really compelling how she kind of works that relationship and kind of tries to gain information and pass things along, and then how things start to devolve and get unsafe for her. Those sorts of things are the best parts of the movie. What I don't like is the relationship part, which is really a crux of the plot, unfortunately. Cary Grant and Ingrid Bergman meet early on in the movie. He's supposed to be her handler, so recruiter and handler. He brings her in, and for some reason, he doesn't really fully understand what will be asked of her and decides to engage in a relationship with her before she even starts to do spy work for them and him being the handler. And then things get messy. Obviously, they fall in love, or as far as Alfred Hitchcock goes, they fall in love, which means um, he thought she was really cute drunk, which she is. And then they both fell in love over that, I don't know, couple days. um, yeah, it's pretty silly, but that's a lot of Alfred Hitchcock's relationships go. Um, you'll see that's a thing I don't like as much in his movies. So anyway, that really drags down the movie, especially because just how Cary Grant's character reacts to Ingrid Bergman, and um, I feel like any kind of ire Ingrid Bergman throws back to Cary Grant's character is justified. So it's like whenever she's kind of being sassy or hurtful back to him, it's like, okay, that's what he deserves because he's being a giant asshole and doesn't seem to understand what's going on. Things kind of work out in the end, and that's fine. Honestly, if they wanted to have this relationship develop over time, I think it would have been better if it developed like as as her job, like as kind of him being her handler and them having to meet and discuss things and him getting more concerned for her. Like, I think it would have worked better if it was the opposite, like if all that stuff happened later in their relationship as they started to feel for each other, and then that's when their relationship started getting in the way of her doing her job and him kind of doing his job and that sort of thing. But unfortunately, the relationship part is front loaded and then it carries through the whole movie. So it really is a crux of the plot, and I think that takes a lot away from the really cool stuff that's going on with like kind of how women are you like, I mean, it's tragic how women are used in the world of spycraft during this time, but um like it's interesting how people judge them and how it's perceived, even though, that's definitely what the people in charge want. So it's really this interesting look at the whole thing. But I give it 3.5 out of 5 stars just because I think they could have done things different with the relationship that would have still made it important to the story, but it would have been worked better for the movie overall, I think, if it was differently placed. Yeah. Let's move on. Rope. This was my favorite movie on this whole list. I give it 5 stars out of 5. Given a like. It's amazing. Um, I did not realize this was also a single location movie, but also this is a single location and at least made to look like single long tracking shot through the whole movie. Um, it's one set of an apartment, and the setup is these two guys commit a murder of a friend, and then they decide to host a party with the hiding spot for the body basically being the centerpiece for the party, and essentially the hubris, basically the fun of the fun of the movie, or the tense, the what makes the tension is the hubris that um, especially Brandon, played by John Dahl, has, as far as like having this plan for how to go about things and having this body basically in the middle of the party, but nobody knows because it's hidden. Uh, but then it's this, I don't know, kind of cat and mouse game of them, of, the audience knows what's going on, but all the other things are. So as kind of things start to move through the movie, that's how the tension works, because both the audience knows things, and then uh, Farley Granger plays Philip, who gets very, very skittish as the movie goes along. And then James Stewart enters the movie, and he is starts to sniff things out. He starts to figure out things are a little bit suspicious, and he eventually kind of, yeah. Anyway, he's integral to how the movie kind of unfolds by the end. I wouldn't even, I would He's listed as the feature character, but I don't think he's the lead. Certainly, John Dahl's Brandon is basically that the pair that committed the murder are really the leads, and we're following them trying to get away with it, basically. Um, and that's how the movie works, and it's really well done. Just the conversations within this movie too, about like morality and like what people have the right to like the right to like about superiority and things. And this is interesting because, post World War II, you'd think people would have a different idea of what certain individuals thinking they're superior and supreme, and they can make choices to harm people that are less, they deem less than. You would think that that would be a thing, but that's just I guess that's the thing through history. There's lots of magnanimous people and people who think they're better than everyone else, and they think that there's lots of people that are less than, that deserve to be punished, or they're not respected and thrown away. So that's kind of how this movie goes, and there's some really great stuff in here. So 5 stars out of 5. Check it out. The Lady Vanishes. I give this 4 stars out of 5 and gave it a like. The Lady Vanishes tells the story of basically this woman. Let me backtrack. So basically, there's this group of people who's all supposed to be on a train together. There's an avalanche that kind of blocks the tracks, so they have to stay at a hotel all together. And everybody kind of meets and they have their little, that's how we get introduced to the characters. But then they all get on a train together to leave this town. And our lead, um, played by Margaret Lockwood, yes, she gets hit on the head with something, a brick falling or a pot falling, and then this old woman who's who is a governess um, helps her onto the train, and then nurses her to health. But as um, our lead kind of fades in and out on the train, one of the times when she wakes up, the person that she was helping her is missing and no one remembers that she was ever on board. And that's the story, is basically this woman tries to find this missing old woman that uh, basically everybody's saying doesn't exist, and it's whether or not is she just dealing with head trauma, did she make it all up because of that, or is there a giant conspiracy going on? And that's how the movie works. She has Michael Redgrave plays a really good kind of like teammate for her as they try to solve this mystery together. At first, they're kind of at odds with each other. They don't like each other from their past dealings, but they actually come together really quickly, very nicely as this team. And he, for some reason, is interested in trying to suss out this mystery with her. I think, sometimes it feels like he doesn't quite believe her, but he still wants to go along for the ride because he's having fun with it. And yeah, it just goes from there. And I think it's really well done. The third act is a little messy, and that's maybe the detractor of this movie. But I really like how it kind of unfolds, and I love these two kind of working off each other to try to figure things out. It's a really fun mystery, I think. All right, Strangers on a Train actually stars one of the guys from Rope, the guy who is really shifty and squirrely and uh, kept trying to nearly give things away. But he's the lead. He's a tennis pro, and he meets Robert Walker's character, Bruno Anthony, and basically Bruno Anthony has this idea that they can swap murders. And I just watched Do Revenge, so it felt like, obviously this is way earlier, but like they basically the plan that he proposes, but isn't necessarily ever agreed upon um, by our lead, I guess, our the person we're supposed to be rooting for, played by Farley Granger. Um, but basically that they will commit each other's murders that they want to do. Um, um, Granger's character is his wife has been trying to divorce him for a while, but since she realized that he's getting successful or whatever, or I don't know, she wants to stay in it for his money or whatever, and is making things difficult for him because he's ready to move on, and she's been ready to move on for whatever, but then changes her mind, and that kind of messes with his plans. And he doesn't necessarily want her dead, but it's proposed that that would solve his problems, and then in exchange, then he would kill Bruno Antony's father, who he just doesn't like. And I don't know, Bruno Anthony is a schemer, and that's basically how this movie works. Is basically he goes ahead. I don't. This isn't really a spoiler. He goes ahead and commits the murder of our lead's wife, and basically kind of puts the pressure on him the rest of the movie. And it's basically this cat and mouse game, because also the police put like a tail on our lead to make sure that he's not the one guilty of his wife's murder. So that makes things complicated. And I don't know, this gets a little tiresome. And while Fairly Granger was good as the kind of nervous partner in Rope, him doing essentially the same thing of being really stressed out and like I don't know, basically giving a similar performance but in the lead, it does not work very well in a lead role, and I don't really care uh, as this movie unfolds, and it's not very interesting. I don't know. I definitely lose interest as this movie goes along, even though there's some really cool scenes and really cool kind of the way the plot unfolds is pretty interesting at times, but it's just I don't know. Maybe I just wasn't in it in the mood when I was watching it. This is when I started hitting fatigue of just all these Hitchcock movies in a row. Um, but also, I don't know. I think there were some things that can't quite put my finger on that I didn't like as much about this. So 3 stars out of 5. I do give it a like, but it's not a strong like, certainly. And then Dial M for Murder. Basically, Dial M for Murder is just a bunch of monologues about pretty much the same crime set piece, like setup, frame job. I don't know, whatever it is. But basically, there's a monologue that where the person kind of explaining the plan of what they want to do, and then this thing happens, and then there's the police investigation trying to figure out what happened, and then there's this other story that gets kind of spun up that's also done through monologue, and then someone later after um, Gene Kelly or Grace Kelly, sorry, Grace Kelly is successfully, I guess, framed and put into jail. Um, is trying to propose an alternative story to kind of help free her and give her, uh, yeah, basically doubt, reasonable doubt that would potentially get her off. And yeah, and then also another monologue about how they plan to try to catch the actual baddie. And honestly, I feel like this movie, Grace Kelly didn't have a lot to do in this movie. Other people have more to do, but really, this movie would not work if it wasn't for John Williams, who plays the investigator character. No, not the famed composer who's done every single Spielberg movie, basically. Um, but basically, he's this famous inspector, a la Sherlock Holmes or Hercule Poirot, those sorts of, you know, guys who kind of go long-winded about explaining how things happen and how they figured it out and how they plan to, I don't know, do things. And that's just kind of how this movie works. But he presents those things very well, much better than some of the other characters. Our main antagonist is pretty good at it too. I lost his name for a second, but it's okay. But basically, this is a three stars out of 5. I give it a like. I do like it more than the last movie I talked about. Um, there are like the monologues are good, but it kind of feels like the movie feels chunked up, and doesn't always flow quite as well. So that's it. That's Dial M for Murder. To Catch a Thief, I gave 4 stars out of 5 and gave it a like. To Catch a Thief, this was the one where I've seen before but didn't pay full attention or maybe fell asleep during. I don't know. But there were scenes that definitely came back to me when I was watching this, and maybe I saw more than I remember. But this one I was definitely paying full attention to, and I really enjoy this movie. Cary Grant plays this past jewel thief that is in retirement on the French Riviera in Nice, and there's this other person who's basically trying to frame him and do burglaries like he did. And basically, everybody thinks it's him, and he is to try to help the insurance company figure out who it actually is. And that's how this movie goes. But then Grace Kelly is also in this movie, and she is amazing in it. Uh, has a lot more to do than Dial M for Murder. Um, there's a scene with her driving that is one of the best scenes in the movie. Um, I also really like. I do want to find her name. I always also like Brigitte Aubert as Danielle. She's has limited scenes, but in every scene she's in, she kind of steals the scene, and Cary Grant's in it. So in those scenes usually, or Grace Kelly is also in in some of those scenes. She's just really she's a really good character, really dynamic in the limited screen time she has. And then also I just really like the I have been a little tired of some of the banter with as far as Hitchcock goes with Cary Grant. I like Cary Grant banter and several other things. It does get a little like it doesn't age. Some of it doesn't age as well, for sure. But I definitely liked Cary Grant and Grace Kelly's dynamic in this movie. I think that it was um, definitely a back and forth that worked better for me. I liked the barbs they threw to each other, the rhythm of it. They really kind of had that chemistry as far as kind of being at, I don't know, kind of flirting with each other, but also messing with each other and, yeah, kind of trying to get each other's way. It's, yeah, it's a good dynamic. So To Catch a Thief is a fun movie. That's basically it. It's like this is a movie you're just supposed to have fun with, and I did. So there you go. All right. So Marnie was one I was considering whether or not to have on this list, but lots of people were talking about it, especially Tippi Hedren's performance within the movie, and she certainly her performance is definitely the best part of this movie. Like Sean Connery is really good in it too, but unfortunately, um, as charming as Sean Connery is, and honestly, sometimes it makes you forgive this character. Not really, but this character is kind of, he really is terrible. He basically emotionally blackmails her into marrying him, and then is being treated as this savior the rest of the movie as he tries to delve deeper into her mental health issues and why she is the way she is. Um, and why she feels like she needs to steal and do crimes, and I don't know why she's scared of certain things. And there's a lot of like psychoanalysis and kind of debunked psychology theories that he's kind of using to um, kind of get down this road. So that's also kind of annoying for me. But also, he's treated as kind of like this savior character and going on this journey with her, but he's kind of kept her as prisoner in the process, more or less. Um, and that's just really icky. And there's not really much way around that. I give this 3 stars out of 5 and do not give it a like. Those problematic issues really take a lot of points out of this movie, even though there is really interesting character work going on, particularly for the you know Marnie character. Well, that's his nickname for her, but still. Um, and I do really like the reveals at the end about where certain things come from. That's really cool, but just how they get there, I don't know. Yeah, it's problematic. So yeah. All right, so that's all of uh, the rest of the movies of Hefty Helpings of Hitchcock. I'm gonna go through kind of like the overall summary really, really fast. Um, So at the end of this project, I have a new ranking for Hallowed Hitchcock hierarchy. Rear Window is still my number 1, but Rope has jumped into my number 2. The Birds is my number 3. North by Northwest is my number 4. Psycho's 5. Rebecca is 6. Lifeboat is 7. The Lady Vanishes is 8. To Catch a Thief is 9. Notorious is 10. Shadow of a Doubt is 11. I might actually, I may, I'm not sure whether I should flip Shadow of Doubt or Notorious. They're basically in a tie for 10th. And honestly, could even slide To Catch a Thief behind both of them, but I had more fun with To Catch a Thief, gave it higher rating, so it stays there for now. And in some ways, I really wanted to put The Lodger above both of them, but they do have prestige, and there's a reason why they have prestige. And The Lodger is a silent film. There are some kind of like things about silent films that kind of like hinder it. Um, but I really, if you guys remember, I really enjoyed The Lodger, so it's my number 12. Then Vertigo, I just never connected with Vertigo. I agree, it's really well done filmmaking, but I just got too disoriented in it, and I don't know, it was a little bit too much work to follow along. Like, it's not super like, I don't know. It's not too complicated for me, but like I don't know. I just didn't have as much fun with kind of going along with that movie as other people have. Lots of people think it's his best movie, so but it's just not mine favorite. Dial M for Murder is next, then Strangers on a Train, then Foreign Correspondent, then Marnie, and then the 39 Steps, which I like less and less the more I think about it. So those are my rankings for both, past, having seen the Hitchcock movies I've seen in the past, and then incorporating the 13 that I watched and get to add to the list now. Um, Kind of the patterns I found, Hitchcock is definitely a master of suspense and mystery, and those things work really well in his movies. But the relationship dynamics in his movies, I had a lot of problems with. There's a lot of really shallow love interests, which I guess in the golden era of Hollywood and stuff like that, there is a lot of like really like love at first sights and like really kind of shallow relationships that are the center of a lot of movies. Um, but I feel like the way he works with these characters is even more so. And then there's just some ickier dynamics with like some of his characters too. Like I said in Marnie, there's a lot of like really messed up coercion in there. And in Shadow of a Doubt, there's almost like this, I don't know, people not acting like idolizing people, not like family, but like something else. And if that wasn't his intent, he did a very bad job, in my opinion, of filming it and communicating it as actually like what a family member would react to a favorite uncle. Did not feel like that, and just those sorts of things, and also there's just lots of times there was just a relationship thrown in when there really didn't need to be. The 39 Steps didn't need it. Um, Foreign Correspondent, they didn't need to be a romantic pair, or at least it didn't need to be as much of a focal point of the movie. Um, yeah. A Shadow of the Doubt has some thrown in there. Notorious's relationship, I think, could have been in there later, but because it's in there from the start, I think that's a problem. And then, yeah, so those are my biggest issues with Hitchcock. And I know I'm griping more than I'm praising, really. But Hitchcock does have, like, he is a great filmmaker. He has some great movies on here. But he does have some tendencies that are problematic, especially looking back now. So I think that's something maybe if more people revisited Hitchcock, maybe they'd also start to see some of these trends and things that might bother them more. But who knows? Maybe not. Anyway, that's enough about Hitchcock. I went on way longer than I wanted to, but I didn't want to just drop the ball and let it go and fizzle out. So let's move on to years in review. Let's move on to the 1980s. Actually, let's bring that back for a second. So years in review, we're starting with the 80s, 1980s. So a few things off the top here to consider. I've always considered myself to be more like this. Like I love the 80s, that VH1 show, like where everybody's talking about how much great stuff was in the 80s, all the TV, all the movies, all the like I don't know, colors and whatever. And I love 80 things that pops up in TV shows now, kind of like that 80s revival that is very popular in things now, kind of like looking back and being nostalgic for the 80s. I love all that stuff. However, as I was doing research for this project, and doing rankings for each year of the 1980s, I'm realizing I have a lot more blind spots of the 1980s and have seen way fewer movies from the 1980s than I realized. And I think I might actually be an imposter 80s fan. I hate to say it, but gosh, I definitely have some real regrets to remedy within the 1980s. I actually even created a list of 90, I think it's 95 movies long, where I went through each year that of the 80s and kind of picked out the ones that I hadn't seen that are the most glaring, which some of those I had have been on my real regrets list for a while, but other ones I added on. So it's a long list of exclusively 80s movies that I have not seen that I need to see. And honestly, there's still some other ones that, um, for whatever reason, I didn't add to that list that I know that I do also that are also still kind of on a watch list of mine. So I know it's complicated, but I don't need to go into all that exactly. But basically, as you'll see, some of these years in the 1980s, I have not really seen enough movies from the year that I liked enough to do a full top 10. So some of these years are going to be a little lacking as far as what movies I offer. But hopefully by the end of the 80s, the top 100 list will come together nicely for you guys to kind of see where my tastes are. Another thing to consider too, like I said, I have very personal favorites that are nostalgic, and I have some weird ones. And my number one, as you'll see later, my number one movie for the 1980s is one that's going to turn a lot of heads. And there's lots of really great movies that I put it above, but it's just one of these movies I love. And it's kind of like one of the movies I carry as a badge of honor for liking so much. So it's as high as it is for a reason, and I do realize it's pretty silly for it being higher than some other things, but hey, this is my list, not other people's lists. So I'm going to share a piece of me as these projects go along. So let's get to it. So I'm going to jump off of this thing. And so let's slide over to my letterbox and I'll share with you guys the lists that I have for you. So this is basically a giant let's make a list series. So get ready for a bunch of lists. I'll try to give each of these movies their fair shake. Anyway, so 1980 was one of those years that I have not seen very many movies. I think it was only 11 or 12 total. And then some of those movies that I had seen are like 2-star movies, 2.5, 5-star movies that I don't like. So I didn't want to include those just to make a top 10. So I have a top 8 for 1980. I do have a bunch of movies that I'll share with you as far as the ones I have not seen that are not on here because I have not seen them. Okay. So anyway, let's talk about the 8, and I will share with you guys the ones that I have not seen that are missing, that are the most glaring, um, that I plan to watch over the next year. Definitely, I think 2023 is going to be very heavily focused on watching a lot of 80s movies, and getting rid of that 80s fan imposter tag that I just gave myself. No, I don't know. So anyway, at 8. I have the Blues Brothers. I think there's lots of other people who love this movie a lot more than me. This isn't really a super important movie for me. Think I give it, yeah, 3.5 stars out of 5. I really like the movie. There's good music in it. The actors are good in it. Carrie Fisher is really awesome in it. But like I've only watched this movie a couple times. It's not one of my favorites that I revisit like other people do. So it's just not one that really um, rises to my favorites. So it's just a little lower for me than some other people have it. Then we have John Carpenter's The Fog. I really like this movie. I really like the atmosphere it creates. There's some cheesy stuff in it, but John Carpenter does a really good job of even making that stuff work. I really like The Fog. And then Flash Gordon, I mean, you can't make a best of the 1980s list without talking about Flash Gordon. It is one of the most 80s movies that ever 80'd. I guess it's got some late 70s um, influences as well as many of these 1980 movies do. Um, but definitely it's definitely a time capsule movie for sure. Definitely with all the Queen music as part of the soundtrack that is as well. Honestly, the Queen soundtrack is probably the reason why I like Flash Gordon as much as I do. Superman 2, I didn't watch this for the first time since I think last year sometime. When I watched all the Superman movies, I had never seen any of the original Superman movies, but Superman 2, I think, might actually be my favorite Superman movie. So it's my number five in the year 1980. I just really love, I really love Clark and Lois, like their dynamic throughout this movie. Um, I do like, Zod and kind of Terrence Stamp's version of that character, and kind of the trio of them of the Kryptonians that Superman has to deal with, and there's a lot of funny stuff in this and a lot of fun stuff. Um, yeah, I mean, it's a good Superman movie, so it's my five. Caddyshack is one of the funniest movies ever made. Certainly some of the jokes are very much dated. There's some problematic stuff in it for sure. That a lot of National Lampoon stuff. It's like that. Um, but there's just so many iconic scenes in this. I don't really need to explain that much to you guys about why Caddyshack is great. I really like golf too, so Caddyshack works nicely for me. Whenever I every once in a while when I play golf, if somebody's putting, I'll shout out like Noonan, or if when I'm putting, I kind of do the Chevy Chase like no 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 no. Those sorts of things, come back to you when you're playing golf sometimes, or I don't know. They sometimes they just come to you in other moments too, and they're still fun. So Caddyshack is awesome. I really love it. Um, it's definitely a movie that is uh, important to me, I guess. Important to me? I don't know. That's a little strong, but it's definitely a movie that I like a lot. The Shining is amazing. I haven't seen enough Stanley Kubrick movies to say it's my favorite, but it probably is, and probably by a lot. Um, but The Shining is awesome. Cinematography, especially the acting is great. Um, I just rewatched it recently and it's still so good. I did see this later in life, but it didn't matter. It made me maybe appreciate even more, just especially because it was at a time when I was really trying to appreciate filmmaking, and this movie is a filmmaking like masterpiece. Like, uh, that's what you want to watch this movie for. Uh, it's great. Um, then we get to Star Wars. Empire Strikes Back came out in 1980. It's my number two. Yeah, some people have this as their favorite Star Wars movie. It's not my favorite Star Wars movie, and it's not my favorite movie in 1980. I do like it a lot, but there's other things I like better in the 80s and in 1980, or at least one thing I like better in 1980. Airplane is one of my favorite movies ever, as you'll see later. It's a five-star movie for me. It's a comedy. It is, I think it is the funniest movie uh, I've ever seen. I laugh at it so much. I quote so many lines. one of my favorite things to do is whenever I spill something on myself, I say that I have a drinking problem, and probably 70% of the time, whoever I'm around when I say it understands what I'm referencing, and but then other times it's just this awkward exchange where people are a little worried for me, and then I explain, and then it's like, oh, okay, and it's still awkward, but a different kind of awkward. So, but Airplane is really fun, really quotable, and it's one of my favorite movies of the 80s period, and certainly of 1980. All right, so let's move on to the next year. Just keep chugging. Let's go to 1981. Best and favorites of 1981. Raiders of the Lost Ark is an amazing movie. I love Indiana Jones. It's my second favorite Indiana Jones movie, but it's so good. It's my number one in 1981. I know I'm doing this in reverse order now. Uh, but whatever, let's keep going with it. Uh, Number two of 1981, The Fox and the Hound. This is certainly has a lot of nostalgia drive to it. This is one of the Disney movies I rewatched over and over and over again when I was little. There's several movies like that I watched a lot, and those are the nostalgia faves that are gonna creep up in the 80s lists and especially the 90s lists. And The Fox and the Hound is one of my favorite Disney animated movies and animated movies, period. Um, but it just hits you in the heartstrings, this movie, and I love it. And I think it deserves to be highly too. It's not just a nostalgia favorite. I think it's a really great animated movie. It has a great story, very heartwarming, but also tragic too. Yeah. So, and then number three, An American Werewolf in London. I didn't see this movie until fairly recently. I think it was last year's horror movie makeup project is when I saw it for the first time. So a little over a year ago. Um, but still, it's later in life. But it's a very funny movie. But also like the transformation scenes are really great. I think it's really strange how much a porn theater is featured in this movie, but it kind of works for the movie. It's one of the special elements of this movie. Um, but yeah, there's a lot of really cool stuff in this movie. I also really like how kind of he's haunted by his dead friend and how he kind of decomposes over time. The practical effects of that too are amazing, and I don't know, that's why people talk about this movie so much. I feel like, and it deserves to be highly praised, and I highly praise it as well. So number three, number four, another Carpenter movie. This is Escape from New York. This is this first Snake Plissken movie. Um, this is a good romp of him working his way through post-apocalyptic New York City prison. Yeah, New York City's turned into prison. Yeah, and he has to, yeah, rescue someone and bring him out. And yeah, it's an interesting movie setup, but there's a lot of colorful characters. It's a good plot. It's exciting. It's good action, and Snake Plissken is pretty fun. Is definitely an iconic character as well. One of the best Mad Max movies is The Road Warrior or Mad Max 2, whichever one you want to call it. It goes by both names as far as I understand. I think the first Mad Max, I don't know how many people have actually, seen it, but it's very different than the rest of the Mad Max. And Mad Max, I think the Road Warrior is what people really think of when they think of Mad Max, at least before Fury Road came out. Certainly, I think this is the one people have elevated most highly. I mean, Beyond Thunderdome has a very similar thing, but certainly that's made fun of a lot. Um, that movie is made fun more than The Road Warrior is. Um, yeah, this is another fun post-apocalyptic story in 1981, and I really enjoy it. It's my number five. History of the World Part One. It's Mel Brooks's movie. I don't know why there's not a part two. I would have liked to see one, or maybe there. is, and I don't know about it, but I don't think there is. I think that's part of the joke. But uh, this movie was so good. I wish there was a part two. I really like how it makes fun of history. Certainly, there are probably jokes that don't age well. I haven't seen this movie in a while, so I can't really speak to that very expertly. But I just remember laughing at so much in this movie, and I really like history in movies, which we'll talk about in the next movie on this list. And so I love always see love different ways history is represented in movies, especially comedically. Um, so Time Bandits is one that I watched for the first time very recently, within the last couple weeks, and this is a lovely. It's not a Monty Python project, but it is a Terry Gilliam movie, and it does have a lot of the Pythons in it. Um, but it isn't an official. I guess I don't think it's actually an official Monty Python movie. But Time Bandits is really fun. They get to go through different periods in time. This kind of group of um, burglars, I guess, thieves, bandits, and this little kid gets carried along for the ride, and they go through holes in the time fabric where they're able to kind of move through different periods of time, and it's fun. And there's kind of this interesting ending that makes you wonder how much of the stuff that you watch is real, but then maybe it is all real, and I don't know. I kind of like how it messes with your head near the end as well. Then eight, The Evil Dead. There are some things that are problematic in this movie, obviously, with trees and sexual assault, and yeah. But of the Evil Dead movies, I think this is I think this is the one I'm most impressed with. Lots of people really like Dead 2, which is essentially the remake of this, not just sequel, but remake also, um, where they kind of changed the tone. But the practical effects within this, they have them in the other movies too, but um, what they were doing in this movie with like the budget they were doing with, I think it makes this movie a lot more charming in its grotesqueness, I guess you could say. So I kind of think I like this one better than the other ones. I think I like Army of Darkness the most, like have the most fun with it. Probably is my favorite, but I think this is the one I'm most impressed with, if that makes sense. So it's my number 8 of 1981. Then I have Clash of the Titans. I remember seeing this like in school, this being shown in school for like showing kind of mythology in the Perseus story, and well, Theseus, Perseus, but yeah, and Pegasus and little robot owls, and yeah. Then we also have Michael Mann's first movie, I think, first feature film in 1981, Thief. This is just a really cool kind of like safe cracking um, movie, and definitely has Michael Mann style all over it, and that makes it fun and good. So that's my number 10 for 1981. Oh, yeah, since I forgot to do some things here, let's let me talk about the 1980 movies that I haven't seen and 1981 movies I haven't seen. The most glaring ones from 1980 that I have not seen are The Elephant Man, uh, um, then Ordinary People, Heaven's Gate, 9 to 5, Fame, American Gigolo, Cannibal Holocaust. Those are kind of some of the big ones I have on my to-do list for 1980. 1981, you have Excalibur, I haven't seen. Stripes, I'm pretty sure I haven't seen in full. Das Boot, I haven't seen. My Dinner with Andre has been one on my list for a long time. I just haven't been able to find it anywhere um, whenever I look. So that's on there. On Golden Pond is a Katharine Hepburn movie I hope to get to at some point. Um, yeah, those are my 1981 ones. There are some definitely some 1981 movies I think would definitely break up this top 10 a lot. I think once I see My Dinner with Andre, it'll be one of my maybe favorite movies, period, because it being a one location movie, and I think I'm gonna love it. So I can't wait to see it when I see it, but haven't seen it yet, so can't really talk about it. All right, let's move on to 1982. I'm not sure which is better. Let's go back to the 15. Go from the bottom up. That's what I'm gonna do later anyway. All right, Airplane 2, the sequel. This probably shouldn't be on there, but I love Airplane so much. I just tacked this on at the end of this 1982 list. This one, they go to outer space, and it's a chartered space shuttle that's sent on it's on a course to the sun, and our hero from the first movie has to figure out how to turn it around before everybody burns up in the sun. Yeah, cool, right? Um, it's definitely none of it is as good as the first one, but uh, it has ridiculousness that is admirable, I would say. Um, so, and I still have like a soft spot for it. Tootsie, 3.5. This is yeah. This probably doesn't age very well. I don't know. Maybe it does, but um, this is a movie lots of people like. I liked it pretty well, but it's not super high up there for me. It's not like a big thing for me, but it's worth mentioning when in the 1980s I don't have um, quite as many movies as other decades to share some of my favorites for. Um, I do actually like the 1982 version of Annie. I think it's become popular for a lot of people to make fun of this movie, um, but I like this version of Annie. Um, certainly, certainly, Carol Burnett is like in this role is one of the best things ever. So. Um, Annie definitely, I think, is worth being on my list. It's at 13. Gandhi is a really well-made movie. Good historical, epic biopic. Um, and Ben Kingsley is very good in this role. Um, it's not super important to me, but I think it's really well done, so it's my 12. Rambo First Blood. I know lots of other people have this probably way further up near the top of the 80s. But as you'll see, some of my blind spots are the Sylvester Stallone movies, the Arnold Schwarzenegger movies, basically the Macho Man movies, I think I'm going to call them from the 80s. There's a lot of those I have missing. I've only seen one Rambo movie, and it's this one. I do like this one a lot. I think it's really good. There's just other things I like better. Um, than Rambo First Blood. This probably does deserve a rewatch, for sure. And it probably would be higher up than what it is, but at the moment it's 3.5 stars. And at my 11 spot for the year. The Last Unicorn is an animated movie that's I feel like it's a hidden gem that almost like a cult classic. I think, uh, I think some people kind of grabbed onto it and it got shared around a good bit. I had a friend in college who it was one of his favorite movies. I've only seen it a couple times, um, and really only one time where I was really paying really close attention. Um, and I do really enjoy it. It's a really pretty animated movie. It's an interesting story. My number 10 for 1982. Creep Show. I really love this anthology horror kind of movie. I like it more the more I think about it. Originally, I was kind of conservative about where I rated it and ranked it when I watched it for a horror movie makeup 2 years ago. Now I think it is the first one I did, but I really like Creep Show and all the different basically horror shorts that are um, stuck within this. I think they're all really fun in their own right. Some are weaker than others, but I really like what George A. Romero and the contributing filmmakers did with this movie. The Dark Crystal. Um, I yeah. Um, I haven't seen this a bunch, but when obviously the Dark Crystal TV show, I did a kind of a rewatch of this and really gained a better appreciation for kind of the lore of Dark Crystal and the Jim Henson of it all. And I mean, who doesn't love a good Jim Henson movie, right? The Dark Crystal's really fun. The Skeksis are gross and evil, and I love the sound effect from the Chaplin character. I think Chamberlain, the Chamberlain Skeksis character. Um, that's such a great uh, villain, like sniveling, like sneaky villain character within this movie. So this is my number 8. The Secret of Nim. Uh, this is a great animated movie with a mother basically fighting for her son, going on this crazy adventure to save her son and get him medicine and yeah, all those things. A good mother on an adventure movie. I really love Tron. I know people make fun of it. I know people don't like the effects of it, and I guess yeah, they're pretty shitty, but honestly, they're like, I don't know, charmingly terrible with the all the glow around everything. And but I just love the stupid world they create with them getting put into a computer. And um, I'm not really a computer person, so I don't really understand all the uh, parallels or whatever, but they do a really good job of explaining those things within this movie through the mechanism of little tiny people moving around within the system and just kind of like having these allegories of how the machine works. And so I really like Tron for that. And it's got like cool video game stuff in it. Yeah. Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan is number 5. These are where I'm really getting to some of my favorites. I this is yeah, it is my favorite Star Trek movie. There's like 4 of them that are all really close, 3 or 4 of them that are all really close to my favorite Star Trek movie. But certainly, The Wrath of Khan is lots of people's favorites, and there's a reason for it. I became a Star Trek fan later in life, but I am definitely much more of a Trekkie than I am a Star Wars fan now. And while the movies are not as good as the shows, as far as Star Trek goes, this is definitely one of the Star Trek movies that is worthwhile. Um, so, Star Trek, there's not much more to say about that right now. Blade Runner, the original Blade Runner, 1982. I love Blade Runner 2049, the sequel, a lot, a lot, a lot, a lot as well. And Blade Runner 1982, I think like a lot of people, the first time they saw it, it maybe hit differently. And then on subsequent viewings, they gain a better appreciation for it. And I'm that way too. But I feel like the movie, what I love kind of the style of it all, the score, the visuals, the kind of like the world they build, all that stuff is really great through the bulk of the movie. And some of the characters are really colorful and interesting to follow. But honestly, the reason why this movie is so impressive for me is the final act. And really, it's just Rutger Hauer's performance, especially with the Tears and Rain speech. I think I said that right instead of, yeah, Tears and Rain speech. Um, it's just one of the best monologues in movie history, and it just makes the whole movie work so well. It's not just one scene. It's like it it speaks so much to the rest of the movie before it, and is such a great capstone to the movie. Um, The Thing, John Carpenter's The Thing. This is my 3 of 1982. Um, Yeah, it's a great movie. Practical effects, awesome. John Carpenter's amazing. The Thing is one of my favorite movies of the 80s. Yeah, it's worth recognizing for sure. Poltergeist, I did not see this movie until the first year of horror movie makeup, 2 years ago, and it became one of my favorite movies, like period, let alone horror movies. But this is a 4.5 star movie for me out of five, and um, I just love how it mixes this Amblin Amblin-esque, which I guess Spielberg produced that helped produce this. So there's this awe and wonder that is mixed in with like the creepy, like horror and terror that's going on with kind of like um, the hauntings, I guess you'd call them, the hauntings and possessions and things that go on in this movie, and how their house is kind of, yeah, the haunted house of it all. Um, but yeah, and I love the score. I love the acting, the atmosphere. The atmosphere is just everything. Like this movie is all about atmosphere, and it's one of the best movies at creating that for me. So it's one of my favorite movies. Um, Even though it's a newer favorite, one of my favorite movies. And then of course, who can go wrong with E.T.? It's my number one of 1982. E.T. is amazing. Talk about Amblin. I mean, this is like the face of Amblin, really, and childhood wonder and um, like I mean, that image of E.T. and Elliot on the bike is etched in everyone's memory for a reason. This movie's great. There's not much to say about it. Almost everybody thinks it's great. It's one of Spielberg's best movies. We're talking about him a lot lately with Fablemans, so certainly E.T. is a thing worth talking about. From 1982, some of my most glaring blind spots. I have not seen Grease 2. That's maybe not super. It's probably not a terrible loss. Other people might disagree, but I haven't seen Grease 2, and I'm reminded of it every time I play horror. What is it? Murder Trivia Party on Jackbox games, because they always ask about Grease 2 songs in the final round, and I don't know any of the Grease 2 songs, and it's really frustrating. I haven't seen Halloween 3. Well, I haven't seen any of the Halloween sequels, but other than the new ones, which hardly counts. But Halloween 3, Season of the Witch, I haven't seen. I've hear lots of people talk about that one as a gem within the Halloween series. Sophie's Choice, I have not seen. And then the big one from 1982, one of the biggest ones on my Real Regrets to Remedy period, is The King of Comedy. I have not seen The King of Comedy from Martin Scorsese, and it's definitely one I plan to remedy sooner rather than later, I think. All right, let's move on to 1983. All right, I'm going to try to pick up this pace a little bit here. It'll help because I have less movies on this one. Um, but this is another one of the years where I have less to talk about because there was less movies I've seen that I liked enough. Flash Dance. I mean, there's great dances. There's great soundtrack. There's definitely two iconic scenes for sure with um, the water, like the water coming down, and and then her audition scene. Those are really fun in this movie. Um, Lots of people make fun of this movie, and there's lots of stuff worth making fun of in this movie, but it's definitely this cheesy 80s movie that you can't help but love. Yeah. War Games is definitely a very fun, like, I don't know, sci-fi. I don't know what you'd call it. I guess, yeah, it's a sci-fi premise, really. But like, basically, what if a war games computer like kind of took over, and then somebody had to like crack it? And I think it's a fun movie. Definitely an 80s movie, that's for shit. That's for damn sure. Certainly, it's enough of an 80s movie for Ready Player One, not the movie, but the book, to have full replayings of scenes from war games. So yeah, definitely very 80s movie. The Outsiders. This probably should be higher on my list, but I haven't seen it in forever. I remember, like, obviously, I've read the book. It's a very good book. It's taught about a lot, but maybe that's part of the reason why it's one of those, like, always reading through school. There's definitely a feeling like being forced to read certain things, even if some of the things are good, like this one. Um, like there leaves a little left a little bit of a bad taste in my mouth for reading certain things, and so maybe there's some of that baked into this movie and not necessarily giving it enough credit. But there's a great cast of future stars in this movie. um, and I don't know, it's a very strong story. That's really, it's a good job of putting on a screen. Um, 3.5 stars out of 5. I give Christine, John Carpenter's Christine, also 3.5 out of 5 stars, and give it a like. This movie I liked a little less when I first saw it, which I've only seen it once, but the more I think about this movie, the more I like love the style of it, and like just kind of like how it progresses and how batshit insane it gets. You gotta appreciate just like monster car, like um wrecking things up and possessing this kid and turning him evil, more or less. It's pretty crazy. But it's a lot of fun. It's definitely very 80s. Um, so I pushed it up a little bit than I had it before. It's at number 6. Then we have 5, Videodrome. I recently did a big Cronenberg project where I watched a lot of the movies I hadn't seen from him, and Videodrome was one of them. It's definitely a crazy movie as far as imagery goes. Definitely one of the most grotesque as far as his category, the weirdest ones imagery-wise. Um, but and I see why people praise it so much. I think there's a lot of cool stuff in it. Some of it's a little bit too much for me, but I still give it 4 stars out of 5, and that makes it notable. So I give it, it's my 5 of 1983. Number 4 of 1983 is Terms of Endearment. Um, I guess I've watched this twice. The second time I watched it, I thought I hadn't seen it before, and I think it's one of those movies where I like maybe fell asleep during it or something the first time I watched it, and then just didn't remember having had seen it. But I love the dynamic between these two in this movie. I think it's weird how they talk about their relationship, because they talk about how antagonistic they are with each other, but honestly, that's not necessarily. I feel like that's not really their relationship. I mean, Shirley MacLaine obviously gives Jeff Daniels' his character a hard time within this movie for sure, and that certainly probably doesn't make a relationship with her daughter that much better. But Deborah Winger is so charming in this movie. She just glows on the screen, even when she's even when she's dying. Um, like uh, yeah, she just has a way about her in this movie. It's really great. And Jack Nicholson is very Jack Nicholson-y in this. I like their, I mean, their relationship is kind of weird in it, but he's a good addition to this movie. It makes for a good extra element for sure. And then number 3, Trading Places. This is a great comedy. This is 4 stars out of 5 for me. I considered putting a little bit higher. I don't think I like it quite as much as certain other things. But Eddie Murphy and Dan Aykroyd are so great playing off each other, and doing the role reversal is one of the most brilliant things ever. And then all of it being for, of course, the $1 bet, the usual, um, is yeah. There's so much great stuff in that movie. I can't even list it all. But Trading Places is one of the best comedies ever. Yeah, one of the best 80 movies ever. Then we got Monty Python. I do really like a lot of Monty Python stuff. A lot of their humor really works for me. yes, again, I'm going to say this a bunch because we're talking about the 80s, but a lot of the humor is dated. There is some, yeah, there's definitely some problematic things within the jokes within Monty Python crew, and the meaning of life probably does have some of the worst stuff in it, to be honest. Um, but this movie's so brazen. I mean, it's hard not to appreciate just what they put together with this movie. And um, I think it's the best, even though it's sort of like an anthology movie, and works almost like a clip show, it almost works better as a whole movie than Monty Python and the Holy Grail, which is a whole connected narrative. Um, I just like the thematic thing of like beginning of life to the end of life and how they kind of told a little versions of the stories kind of to tell about like the different elements of life. And I think it's a really great masterpiece. 4.5 stars out of 5. Return of the Jedi is my favorite Star Wars movie. Yes. 5 stars out of 5. Um, yeah, I don't know. Uh, I don't feel like I need to talk a bunch about Star Wars movies because people talk about a bunch, and people know why Return of the Jedi is good, and I like all the things that people like a lot in Return of the Jedi. Some of the most glaring um, misses from 1983 are The Big Chill, National Lampoon's Vacation, the first one, I guess, Sleepaway Camp, Silkwood. That maybe isn't a huge glaring one, but as far as Meryl Streep goes, it's talked about a lot, I feel like. Ghost. I haven't actually seen Ghost. I've definitely seen the big scene in it a bunch, but I haven't actually seen Ghost in its entirety before. I haven't seen Children of the Corn or This Is Spinal Tap. 1984, I have a lot of work to do. The Natural, Once Upon a Time in America. This is, yeah. Top Secret. I have not seen that either. Purple Rain. Yeah, there's a lot of 1984 movies I haven't seen. I'm gonna be working on that. Well, we just did 1983. That doesn't help you. So yeah, 1983 movies. So just up through Sleepaway Camp, The Big Chill, National Lampoon's Vacation. But so you got some extras there. You also got my 1984s. So let's talk about 1984. Number 12, Bobby Z's movie he made before he made you know, all the Back to the Futures and Who Framed Roger Rabbits and kind of like the best parts of his career near the beginning. And Romancing the Stone is a great pulpy adventure movie. They made they made a really good sort of homage to Romancing the Stone this year with The Lost City. It's got a lot of the same DNA to it, and I really love that movie this year in 2022. And Romancing the Stone back in 1984 is a really fun movie, and it's my 12 for that year. Number 11 is The Karate Kid. Um, I mean, The Karate Kid is a very notable 80s movie, obviously. Um, you'll see some of the 80s movies from this year that are very highly acclaimed are lower, but 1984 is stacked anyway. So, not some things are just going to be further down. The Karate Kid is, I think with Cobra Kai coming out as a TV show, it kind of shines a light on why certain things of the Karate Kid are a little like, I don't know. Like, obviously we're not rooting for um, Johnny and the bullies as we see it from this perspective. They're definitely jerks and assholes and terrible. But yeah, and it's like LaRusso's not great either, as we know. So the Karate Kid is really good, but Mr. I mean the Mr. Miyagi is what's special about this movie, and all the wax on, wax up stuff. So Karate Kid is iconic for a reason. It's at 9/11. Ghostbusters, I am not as much of a Ghostbusters fan as a lot of other people. I did like Ghostbusters Afterlife, which some people don't, but I do. Um, but Ghostbusters, the first one, it's definitely a great 80s comedy. There's a lot of great stuff to go with it. I've just never been a Venkman fan. Like Bill Murray's character, he's just really skeevy and gross and problematic in his relationship with Sigourney Weaver's character. And yeah, um, that's always rubbed me the wrong way every time I've seen Ghostbusters. And I like Bill Murray and lots of stuff. But in Ghostbusters, he's not my favorite. So yeah, but Ghostbusters obviously has so much cool, fun 80s stuff. So I mean, it has to be in at least a top 10 for one of these years. Footloose is number 9. Um, maybe it's higher up because of the importance of it to the Guardians of the Galaxy holiday special. But and Kevin Bacon being abducted in that. But Footloose is not still the greatest movie ever made or ever was, probably, but it is a really great, fun 80s movie. There's some weird stuff in the story of Footloose, for sure. But the soundtrack in this movie is like one of the best ever. The dance scenes are so good. Um, there's so much to love about Footloose, even if the story is kind of like I don't know. Now the whole premise is a little messed. It's like a little like I don't know. You don't believe it really, but it's okay. Um, then number 8, A Nightmare on Elm Street, the first one. Um, I hadn't seen this until my second year, a year ago, a little over a year ago, second year of horror movie makeup for the first time. Um, actually, was it the first? Maybe it was the first year I did it. Yeah, because I hadn't seen Halloween or Nightmare on Elm Street or Friday the 13th. Yeah. So anyway, was part of the first project, and I really like A Nightmare on Elm Street. I think it's my favorite of those, like the I don't know, the biggest slashers. It's my yeah, it's my favorite of those. It's just my favorite concept of like doing the dream stuff and like the way the villain works. Halloween is a better movie than this, um, but I have more. I really enjoy Freddy Krueger and that more. And obviously Nancy is um, a great final girl for sure. 16 Candles is, and John Hughes is as synonymous with the 1980s as anyone, perhaps, and 16 Candles is definitely one of his most iconic movies. There is a lot of problematic stuff in 16 Candles. It's one of my lesser favorites of his, but it's still a really fun 80s movie, even despite some of its problems with age. Yeah. 6, Gremlins. Gremlins is awesome. Um, love the Mogwai and Little Gizmo. Uh, the rules are confusing, but they're fun. I love how like this movie's kind of really brutal, but it's got this tone of just like it's still got the not quite as much as Gremlins 2, but it's got this tone of doing it in a really silly way and kind of like even though people are dying and like being mutilated and things and stuff like that, it's like it's still kind of like definitely a lighter horror movie for sure. Um, and then Amadeus. Lots of people praise Amadeus so much. It's not a super important movie to me, but it's undeniably a great biopic, a great movie. 4.5 stars out of 5. Nausicaa is one of my favorite Miyazaki movies. Um, If I had any guts, I'd say it's my favorite Miyazaki movie, but right now it's in basically like a three-way tie with Totoro and not Mononoke and then Nausicaa. Um, I just really love the protagonist, and Nausicaa is amazing. I love her flying around on her glider, and I love her story within it, and I love like the world building in this story too. Is really interesting. So yeah, it's my number four of 1984. That might be a surprise to lots of people considering how many great movies are in 1984. The number three, The Never-Ending Story. I love this movie so much. It's definitely a nostalgia favorite. Um, yeah, Wish Dragons and Artax tearing out our our hearts with his death scene. Um, Everybody knows what I'm talking about with that. Uh, but yeah, Never Ending Story. Number three. Number two, The Terminator, with James Cameron, is being talked about a lot right now. This is my favorite of the Terminator movies, which I only like two of them, so it's not really saying a ton. But I do like the Terminator better than T2, um, Judgment Day. Uh, I just Even though Arnold is really great as a sidekick to the kid in T2, I like him as the unstoppable, um, like basically slasher killer, like not unrelenting pursuit kind of monster that they have to figure out how to beat. And then the sci-fi elements, I feel like work so much better in this movie than in the future ones. They definitely get very messy with how the sci-fi and time travel and the implications on changing the future and the past and the blah blah blah. Um, it gets way more convoluted as we go through the Terminator movies for sure. And this one is the most simplistic and it works best for me. And Beverly Hills Cop is one of my favorite movies ever, one of the best comedies ever. Cert I'm not a huge comedy person, but a lot of these 1980s comedies really work well for me, and they're some of my favorite movies. And Beverly Hills Cop, Axel Foley, oh my God, the soundtrack, the score in this movie is one of my favorites. 5 stars out of 5. Um, and his laugh in this is so good. Eddie Murphy, it's Eddie Murphy's laugh, but for some reason, Eddie Murphy as Axel Foley with his laugh and like just how conniving and smart and like clever, yeah, how clever he is at like working around things and people and um, yeah, I love this movie. Beverly Hills Cop is awesome. 1985. I decided to tack Demons on at the end here at number 11. I just watched it for horror movie makeup this year. It's an Italian made horror movie with their demons, but it's essentially works like a zombie movie. Um, yeah, but it's really fun. It's definitely an 80s movie with the 80s rock and roll and the big hair bands, music playing, and motorcycles and like it's gory and in the goofiest and wonderfulest way. So yeah, 11. Tim Burton's Pee-wee's Big Adventure, his feature film debut. Pee-wee's Big Adventure, number 10. This is a fun movie. It's not my favorite Tim Burton, but it's up there. It's definitely not my least favorite because he's got some stinkers, especially now. But yeah, Pee-wee's Big Adventure is number 10 of 1985. Rocky 4 is number 9 of 1985. Um, 8 is Witness. Um, there's some people talking about it recently about, I don't know why I came up that this movie is being watched right now. Um, but it's a really good Harrison Ford movie. He was nominated for it and um, yeah, it's a really good movie. I don't know what else to tell you. About Harrison Ford in the Amish community. Then we have number 7, Come and See. I watched this for the first time as my within my alphabetizing list. So you guys have already seen me talk all about this movie, so I'm not going to talk about it more. Basically, I really like it. It's got some really brutal stuff about war, what it's like to live through war, and kind of the atrocities of what the Nazis did to people as they occupied places, and also like being a child soldier. And yeah, there's lots of stuff in there. Out of Africa was a movie. I'm surprised how much I like it. I watched it as like a silly, romance movie like project during February, leading up to um, Valentine's Day, like I do each year. And I thought it would be kind of like a throwaway epic, like whatever. Um, but it is got such epic scale to it. And Meryl Streep is great in it. Robert Redford's great in it. It really won me over. So yeah, Out of Africa is my number 6. Number 5, The Goonies. For lots of people, this would be much higher up in the 80s. I'm not quite as nostalgic for the Goonies as other people are. Um, I certainly love the Goonies, and but it wasn't one for whatever reason. I think we didn't rewatch it a bunch when we were younger, and I definitely saw it when I was younger, but I felt like I didn't really like watch it until a little bit later. If that makes sense. I don't know if it probably doesn't make sense, but um, like yeah, when I would have rewatched it a bunch and to have it solidify within like my nostalgia favorites, it just wasn't one of the ones in rotation. So yeah, but The Goonies is great. Fright Night, the 1985 version. There's a few different Fright Nights now. When I first watched this, I kept thinking of Mom's Got a Date with a Vampire, the Disney Channel original movie, but this is way better than that. Even though I like that movie. But Fright Night is a very good vampire movie. Basically, is there a vampire next door sort of story. And yeah, it's really fun. Uh, I didn't get scared by it, but it definitely has some like tense scenes for sure. But I really like Fright Night. Um, it was one of my favorite movies of that horror of last year's horror movie makeup project, and it's one of my favorite horror movies now, period. And one of my favorite 80s movies, my 1985 movies, five before. The Breakfast Club. I love this movie so much. This probably is my favorite John Hughes movie. Um, yeah, it definitely is. Um, just that fist pump at the end, the freeze frame, that's iconic, right? There's so many iconic scenes in this. I can rewatch this movie over and over and over again. That's another thing. Is this one of the most rewatchable movies ever? John Hughes is really good about that. This and Ferris Bueller's Day Off they're two movies that I could rewatch anytime and just I still love it as much as I did the first time or the second time or the third time or the 20th time or the 25th time. Yeah, you get my picture. Um, then we get number 2, Back to the Future. Yeah, I'm sorry, it's not my number 1 in 1985. But I do love Back to the Future. It's and honestly, I do think it's a perfect movie. Um, However, it is not as important to me as the one that's in my number 1, because Clue, I just love this movie so much. It's just a personal favorite of mine. I mean, it's a really well done comedy. It's a board game movie, I guess. Um, and the comedy is, I mean, this comedy is so great in this. Uh, the cast is amazing. Um, the flames on my on the side of my face. Like there's so many great things. And monkey brains and communism is a red herring is such a quotable movie. Like I said, I have such a soft spot for a lot of these 80s comedies for whatever reason. So Clue is a little bit ahead of Back to the Future, even though I think Back to the Future is a more perfect movie. One of the most perfect movies. Yeah, Back to the Future is great, but I love Clue even more. And some of my glaring misses for 1985 is Brazil. That's one that's been recommended to me a lot from 1985. Weird Science is a huge one that I haven't seen, a huge 80s classic that I have not seen. Um, and then Commando. Yeah, Commando is a big one too, one of the Arnold Schwarzenegger movies that I have not seen, that probably lots of people would come after me with pitchforks for not having seen. But I haven't seen Commando. I hope to at some point fairly soon to remedy these 80s real regrets. But I haven't seen it yet. And yeah, it's definitely a glaring one. I get it. All right, moving on to 1986. These are going to be longer videos, just because of how much I go through the Hitchcock, obviously added to this video. So I'm going to try to, turn through this best I can. 1986, best favorite slash favorite films of 1986. I'm going to try to go faster. Castle in the Sky. It's a Miyazaki movie I appreciate a lot, but there were things I didn't like about it. I think it was ruined because I was like switching back and forth between subtitles and dubs, and I really did not like the dub parts. I can't remember why I was switching back and forth, but there were reasons why I couldn't. Um, yeah, I don't know. Wasn't able to focus enough to watch it in subtitles or whatever, so I was switching back and forth. Anyway, there's some of Miyazaki's best imagery is in this movie, but I think it gets a little too big and bombastic and a little all over the place for me. I still really like it, but it's my 12 1986. Um, but yeah, it's yeah. Um, 11 Stand By Me. I saw this fairly recently for alphabetizing, so you guys have heard what I think about Stand By Me. It's very good, but of course I've only just seen it, and it's not nearly as important to me as it is for other people. Um, yeah. Hoosiers is a really good basketball movie. I like basketball, so I like Hoosiers. Yeah, that's basically it. Little Shop of Horrors. I watched for horror movie makeup at some time. I don't remember now. They blur together. But I really like the music in it. I really like a lot about it. Of course, I've seen it fairly recently, so lots of people, this is one of their personal favorites, and it just isn't for me. So it's a little lower. It's at my 9, but still I'll give it 4 stars out of 5. An American Tail, I love Lil Feifel. I love his original journey to trying to find his family after getting separated from them, traveling to the U.S. as little mice. Feifel Goes West is fun too, but certainly I like this first one better. And it's my number 8 of 1986. Labyrinth is a Jim Henson, very fun movie with David Bowie as the main antagonist, and little young Jennifer Connelly in the lead, trying to win back her baby sibling. Sorry, I haven't seen it a ton of times, but I've seen enough. There is some great Jim Henson Muppet work going on in this movie for sure. That's what makes this movie really great. But the audacity of David Bowie's character and some other things just make this movie special too. Pretty in Pink is one of my favorite John Hughes movies. It's my favorite. What do they call him? Brat Pack? Yeah, Brat Pack movie. Though, wait, no, that's not true. Because I like Breakfast Club better. But anyway, I like Pretty in Pink a lot. Ducky's amazing. It's mainly I love this movie so much because of Ducky. I like this better than 16 Candles for sure. I think Molly Ringwald's character is better in this movie than 16 Candles. Also, her Love interest is better too. Yeah, there's lots of things that are better in Pretty in Pink than. There are some problematic things in here. James Spader is definitely someone you hate, and he definitely there's definitely some things he does that are uh, yeah, more problematic too within this movie. So yeah, that's pretty big. Three Amigos is one of I love some of these comedies. Obviously, Steve Martin, Chevy Chase, and Martin Short together is just like a recipe for amazingness. And yeah, this movie's great. It's a wonderful like take on basically Seven Samurai, but like a comedic version with actors. And obviously, we've had Galaxy Quest after it too. And basically, Galaxy Quest is um, this sort of movie later too. Um, but Three Amigos is just such a fun comedy and really good like action adventure too, with a bunch of comedy stars in the lead role. Another one of my favorite Star Trek movies is Star Trek 4, The Voyage Home. Yes, the one with the whales, where they go back in time to 1980s San Francisco, and Chekhov asks where the nuclear vessels are. Yes, there's so much wonderful stuff in this. Yeah. The Fly. Um, this is my favorite Cronenberg. I think this is a lot of people's favorite Cronenberg. I think it's probably the most palatable for a lot of people. There is like obviously gross body horror and practical effects going on, but it's really well done. That's why I think it's really well done. And Jeff Goldblum is really great in this, and of course Gina Davis is maybe even more important to this movie, and is really great in it as well. Then we have Aliens, another James Cameron movie, the sequel to Alien, which Alien is I think one of the perfect movies. Aliens is a very good follow-up. Because I like Alien so much more, and also I haven't seen Aliens quite as many times as I've seen that one. This one's not. I don't have it as high up as some other people. I think this Aliens does deserve a rewatch. It's still 4.5 stars out of 5 for me. It's a great action movie. It's a great sci-fi alien monster movie, and Ripley is one of the best uh, like female heroines ever in anything. Final Girls, whatever you want to call it. Yeah, she's amazing. Sigourney Weaver is iconic in as this character. All right, and then as I referenced earlier, I love Ferris Bueller's Day Off. It's one of my favorite movies. I can watch it over and over and over again and not get tired of it. Um, yeah, I gotta watch this over and over again. Uh, honestly, the parade. I mean, there's so much great stuff in it. But the whole parade sequence, I, that sequence alone, I would watch on repeat. Um, it's so great, and also him running home at the end, um, and the score in this, the bow bow, chick, 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 I love that. I love Ferris Bueller's Day Off. It's great. I don't like it quite as much as Breakfast Club, but it's not that far behind, as you'll see later. All right. 1986 glaring misses are Blue Velvet, Cobra, Short Circuit, Maximum Overdrive, the second Karate Kid I still haven't seen, um, the Transformers the movie, the animated one. I haven't seen that. And then The Color of Money, I actually have not seen. I've seen the first one, but not the sequel, the '80s sequel. Moving on to 1987. Yes, this is where I get wacky, but I'm sorry. I love The Brave Little Toaster. I'm going to start with one here because it's staring you right in the face, and if I don't explain it, you're going to be thinking about it the whole time. So I'm going to talk about it first. The Brave Little Toaster is one of my favorite movies ever. It's just this nostalgia favorite that's close to my heart. I love how obscure it is too, so I have like a badge of honor as having this be one of my favorite movies. Um, and it is crazy, this crazy dark animated movie about household appliances trying to cross-country adventure to find their owner, a la like Homeward Bound, which comes later, but yeah. Um, but basically like that, but with, you know, appliances. I love Homeward Bound, so like, I don't know, maybe I just have a thing for that sort of story. But there's so much stuff I love about the Brave Little Toaster. Um, yeah. Number two, The Princess Bride. Just, I don't know, one of the most quotable movies ever. One of the best comedies, fantasies, whatever genre it falls into. It's one of the best of. The first third of this movie, first half of this movie, is one of the best films ever made. The back half is not quite as good, but still really solid, obviously. But it's definitely the first half of this movie that everybody quotes and talks about and is my favorite. So, um, and then I didn't see this until much later, way later than I'd like to admit, but a five-star movie that I really love is Good Morning Vietnam. I'm a huge Robin Williams fan. I think he might be my favorite actor, and Good Morning Vietnam is one of his best. It's my number three of 1987. Lethal Weapon is my number four of 1987. I love the guitar riffs and the saxophone wails and in the score, but also, you know, Martin Riggs um is so crazy and unhinged, and yeah, Danny Glover is amazing too. I mean, you guys know Lethal Weapon. Lethal Weapon's great. Then we have The Untouchables. This is just a really good, like, trying to take down the, I don't know, Capone story and then the backlash you get from it. Sean Connery's great in it. Um, uh, Kevin Costner is really good in it. Everybody's good in it in this movie. And it's just a really well done movie. I like how it's paced and kind of sh shot and yeah, progresses. The Untouchables is a really good movie. Uh, when I went through my John Carpenter watch, where I watched every single one of his movies, to Blank Check Podcast, I gave this 4.5 stars out of 5. It's one of my favorite Carpenter movies. Um, I feel like this is a very underrated John Carpenter movie. I think a lot that's a growing opinion I feel like now too though. So maybe I'm not as much of a pioneer for that, but this is just I'm surprised that I like this movie this much, but it's just I don't know. There's so much re- uh, there's so much to like about Prince of Darkness. I love the grainy texture to it, and just like I I love the investigative nature of them trying to figure out this anomaly and all the different disciplines, both theological and scientific, trying to suss out what this kind of, yeah, possibly demonic anomaly is in this church. And there's the way the movie unfolds too is great. Predator is a great action movie. That's basically, yeah, Predator is a great action movie. I really, really love the Adventures in Babysitting. You guys have seen me wear um, my Stranger Things version of Adventures in Babysitting shirt on a fan's view shows and my show. Um, and I really love the movie. It's very weird. Um, and off the wall, but I love it for that. Um, there's Thor in this, sort of. Um, and yeah, it's great. Vincent D'Onofrio as Thor, uh, mind you. Um, yeah, it's good. I love Adventures in Babysitting. It's very 80s too. Dirty Dancing is one of the most iconic movies ever. Romantic movies, dance movies. It's one of the best soundtracks tracks ever. And a lot of the songs were written for this movie. And just like a lot of the stories about how this was made, what went into it. Is there's Netflix stuff about it, and people have been talking about it for a long time. But Dirty Dancing is a really good movie. Um, don't put Baby in the corner, so I put it in the 9th spot. That's not the corner, I don't think. Certainly not on this list. RoboCop's number 10. This probably should be higher, maybe. I don't know. It's not as important a movie to me. I know lots of people think it's a masterpiece. I give it 4 stars out of 5. I think it's really good. I do really love Paul Verhoeven movies, but there's other Paul Verhoeven movies I like better. And I like other 80s movies better and 87 movies better. And that's just basically what it boils down to. This is a great year too, 1987. This is one of my favorite years and lists of 14 here. Planes, Trains, and Automobiles is a great comedy. I didn't watch this until later for the first time. I think it was last year around Thanksgiving. I watched it for the first time. 4 stars out of 5. Broadcast News, another 4 stars out of 5. This is a really good, just drama, comedy. It's mainly a drama, but like drama with comedic elements about like kind of the behind the scenes of like the TV world. And there's lots of good movies about this sort of story, and Broadcast News is one of them. Full Metal Jacket is Stanley Kubrick's Vietnam War movie. Or yeah. It has a lot of good stuff in it. Especially the opening the opening parts of this movie are really jarring and really stick with you through the whole thing. So Full Metal Jacket's good. And then Nightmare on Elm Street 3, Dream Warriors. This is the only other Nightmare on Elm Street movie I've seen so far. I plan on seeing more of them, but at this point it is. But I really like it. Almost like it as much as I like the first one. There's a lot of really fun kills and imagery in this about like him basically people in a psych ward, I guess. Yeah, they're all kind of being treated for group psychosis. And I just love how they work with that. Yeah, it's good. So number 14 of 1987. All right, so before we move on to 1988, let's talk about 1987's most glaring misses. 1987 is not as bad. But Fatal Attraction, I have not seen. I haven't seen The Monster Squad. I haven't actually seen Three Men and a Baby. And one of the Spielberg movies I haven't seen is Empire of the Sun. Let's move on to 1988. I know these individual years are taking longer. These ranking videos are going to be long because I'm going through a bunch of years, and then I'm going to have a top 100 list. But basically, I'm going through these individual years, spending more time talking about the movies on here so that when I go through the top 100 list, I don't have to spend as much time on explaining why the movies are where, why I like them. So that I only have to talk about placement as opposed to like why I like the movies because I've already talked about it. So then I'll already have talked about them. All right, so now we get to 1988. We start from the bottom. The Land Before Time is obviously a really fun anime movie. The first one especially. Littlefoot and his friends. It's very cute. It's definitely for kids, but I have a nostalgic place for it. So it's my 10 of 1988. Number 9 is Akira. It's got some of the craziest visuals you'll ever see in any movie, let alone an animated movie. And yeah, it gets a little too big for me and over the top. But it's undeniable how crazy, like, I don't know what kind of images they're able to put on screen in animation. It's great craft. It's still 4 stars out of 5 for me. Give it a like. Number 8, Cinema Paradiso. If you love film, if you like romantic stories, if you like coming of age stories, Cinema Paradiso is a really nice movie. It's got some bittersweet notes to it, especially by the end of it. But I really like Cinema Paradiso. I watched it later in life, but that's probably for the best. Have a better appreciation for film and all sorts of other things, so that I could appreciate it better than if I watched it when I was younger. Dead Ringers is my second favorite Cronenberg movie. It's crazy. It's Jeremy Irons playing two twin uh, plastic surgeons. Um, Very experimental plastic surgeons, and it's more about like how their relationships with women and how they like will share women and stuff, and just kind of that twin dynamic that they have, but also like how they treat women and people in general. And it definitely devolves as the movie goes along. They kind of lose themselves in each other a lot, and it's really cool stuff. Um, Check it out, Dead Ringers. Big is number 6. It's just a very fun Tom Hanks movie. It's little kid becomes an adult through magic Zoltar, and he gets to dance on a piano in a toy store, and has a weird romantic relationship. And for sure that I'm like, that's honestly like the weirdest part of the movie, and it's a little problematic, but I don't know. There's still so much fun to be had and big. So I give it 4 stars out of 5 and give it a like. Number 5, Beetlejuice. 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 Uh, Tim Burton is one of my favorite directors, even though he's done some things that I don't like, for sure. But the stuff that I do like from Tim Burton, I really like, and Beetlejuice is one of those things. Um, yeah, Beetlejuice is really good. Um, I I suppose I'm not as high on Beetlejuice as some other people, but I still really like it. So, yeah, Michael Keaton's great as Beetlejuice. But actually, who I think is underrated is Alec Baldwin and Gina Davis, as the dead married couple. And obviously Winona Ryder's amazing, but their relationship with uh, Winona Ryder is actually what I like the most about the movie, beyond Michael Keaton as Beetlejuice, believe it or not. So yeah. um, all right, number 4 is Grave of the Fireflies. This is a Studio Ghibli movie. It's not Miyazaki, but it's from this same studio. This is a gut-wrenching war movie. It's very tragic. It is, it'll rip your heart out. It's a tough watch. However, it's almost like a slice of life, mm, like coming of age movie within a war film, a tragic war film. So it's like, it's kind of sweet and charming for so much of it, and then yeah, it gets really sad and like goes downhill, pretty fast. Well, actually slowly, which makes it kind of worse. So it's a slow burn movie, which makes it kind of like you're dancing through the movie for a bit, and then it gets really hard at the end. So yeah. Um, My Neighbor Totoro is one of my favorite Miyazaki movies. As I said, one of those three-way tie movies for me. Um, if I'm pressed, this probably is my favorite. But yeah, I love My Neighbor Totoro. I love the sibling dynamic between the two. I love the spirits in it. Um, there are some things unanswered in the movie that I still have questions about, but I kind of am okay with them going unanswered for whatever reason. Um, it's just kind of how that movie goes, and yeah, it just kind of comes and goes. And speaking of slice of life, this definitely is one, of just like these two sisters moving into a new place and taking care of each other and just kind of going on little adventures together. And it's lovely and charming, and yeah, it's great. 4.5 stars out of 5. Die Hard is amazing. 4.5 stars out of 5. It is a Christmas movie. You can go away and leave if you disagree, or I don't know. Uh, don't argue with me about it. But I'm going to give my little quick stab there. Um, you know, rest in peace. Obviously, Alan Rickman as Hans Gruber is one of the best villains ever. So, Who Framed Roger Rabbit is actually my favorite Robert Zemeckis movie. Yes, I like it better than Back to the Future as well. I love the combination of animation and the way they did the hybrid of animation and live action. I feel like nobody did it quite like that before that, and Zemeckis was masterful at it in this movie. Um, it's got so many great meta commentary moments as well, like on animation and Hollywood and like all those things and like film noir. Even though I'm like not super knowledgeable in film noir, I definitely like understand that's what they're uh homaging and also riffing on as much as any of the other things they're riffing off of in the movie. Yeah, I have so much fun with Who Framed Roger Rabbit. It's one of those movies I can watch over and over and over again as well. Uh, all right, some glaring misses in 1988. I have not seen Young Guns. Yeah, I know. I'm sorry. I haven't seen Bloodsport. Yeah, I haven't seen a lot of a lot of um, Van Damme movies. But yeah, haven't seen Bloodsport. Haven't seen Killer Clowns from Outer Space. I haven't seen Cocktail. I haven't seen Mystic Pizza. And oddly enough, I've seen a Naked Gun sequel, but I don't think I've ever seen the first Naked Gun. So that's another one from 1988 that I haven't seen. Yeah. All right, let's move on to 1989, the year of my birth. Yeah, I'm a 90s kid, but I was born in the 80s, so there's a lot of the 80s that got brought along with me. And 1989 is one of the best years in movies, period. And I'm glad I was born in it, I guess. I don't know. It's a little badge of honor, I suppose. My favorite Indiana Jones movie is The Last Crusade, and it's my favorite movie in 1989. I guess I'm going to go in this order. I love Lethal Weapon 2. It's my favorite Lethal Weapon movie. It's my number 2 of 1989. Mm, yeah, I think that's right. I'll check myself later. We'll check myself later, and I'll remedy if it's in the wrong order for something later. Dead Poet Society is number 3. This movie hits so hard at the end. It makes you cry for so many reasons. Definitely a tearjerker, but definitely just such a beautiful movie, even with the tragic parts and the bittersweet parts and the yeah. The Little Mermaid is one of the best Disney animated movies. I love Ariel is one of my favorite Disney princesses. Maybe it's because I had a crush on her like so many other boys did growing up. That might be part of it. But Ursula is a great, probably the one of the best Disney villains. So that's a thing as well. I love Sebastian in this. My favorite song in this movie is actually "Kiss the Girl." Um, I just love that scene and Sebastian kind of conducting like he conducts like obviously the undersea number and sings in it, but the way he conducts kind of like them like all that marine life or whatever as they're kind of going on the boat ride in the river is just very nice. Um, Field of Dreams is number 5. Um, if you build it, they will come, and it's great. The best part of that movie is James Earl Jones. Like, he, like as emotional as a lot of the other stuff is, James Earl Jones is why I like that movie so much. Do the Right Thing is a great movie from Spike Lee. Um, I don't know what to say. I didn't see it until fairly recently, but once I saw it, I was definitely had like there was no denying how great of a movie it is. 4.5 stars out of 5. Kiki's Delivery Service is another one of my favorite Miyazaki movies. 4 stars out of 5. 1980, I know 1989 Batman is down this far. People are probably like wondering what's going on, but yeah. Um, there's other Batman movies I like better. I like this one a lot. I like Jack Nicholson's Joker, obviously. I like Keaton's Batman. Um, I like a lot of things about this movie. I like Elfman's score, and Tim Burton. But yeah, it's just below some of these and above a couple others. Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure. I didn't see this until way later than I should have, but I love this movie. I talked about how I love like depictions of history and like doing the time travel thing to like past places and but with a comedic twist. I think that's one of my favorite things maybe in movies, and Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure is one of the best at doing that. They're a great duo. Like this could definitely be a movie that's written off as they're just a dumb duo, but they definitely have an arc within this movie, and they're a lot more than just I don't know, guys that don't know anything. They definitely like learn their own way, and I think that's what we learn to appreciate from them within these movies. And it's not nearly as making fun of them and stuff as you'd think. Uh, Again, this one people would probably have higher, and I love this movie. I didn't watch it until way later than I should have also. But 4 stars out of 5. When Harry Met Sally. It's a very good movie, like no denying. Very funny, a good romance, I guess. Yeah, a good romance, a really good just relationship in general. I like just them as friends, and then also developing into more, and just kind of like they keep meeting up throughout different chapters in their lives is a really cool like plot structure in the movie. So yeah, it's really cool. I love Honey, I Shrunk the Kids. I've seen this movie so many times. I love the model work and all the effects of them getting shrunk down and like dealing with giant things. It's great. Back to the Future Part Two is number 12. I I do really like this movie. I like number 3 as well. Um, um, but certainly the sequels of Back to the Future don't work nearly as well as the first one, and that's just I don't know, a little bit reflected here. Uh, the second one is really cool for the future, like seeing the future scenes. Um, Obviously, they do a lot of rehash of the first one by going back to 1985 in it, which that part I get a little bit bored with, in having to deal with that stuff. So I think that's why I have it down a little bit. Um, More than maybe other people do. I don't know. But it's definitely a good movie. It's definitely worth talking about. It's definitely one of the best 80s movies. Then we have Pet Cemetery. Uh, I saw this first time last year. 4 stars out of 5. Number 13. I really like All Dogs Go to Heaven. It's one of those nostalgia movies for 3.5 stars. I really like Lean on Me. It's a good like educate like person that coming in and reforming an educational place. There's lots of good movies about that, and I like a lot of those types of movies. And Morgan Freeman in the lead of this one is very good. It's a little he's a little heavier handed than you'd think, but then also compassionate in his own way too. So I like the combination of that within Lean on Me. 3.5. In Major League, look, it's 3.5 stars out of 5. I really like it. I think it's really funny. Um, there's other baseball movies I like better. There's other comedies in the 80s I like better. So it's just lower than some other things in both 1989 and the rest of the 80s for me. All right, we got through the 80s. Each year of the 80s. So, uh, what I'm missing from 1989, there's a few ones. Um, The Burbs, I have not seen. I have not seen Roadhouse. I have not seen Parenthood. I'm pretty sure I haven't seen. I can't remember. One of the ones I can't remember I've seen is Steel Magnolias. I think maybe I've seen either part of it or none of it, or I don't know. I haven't seen Driving Miss Daisy, and then I haven't seen Tango and Cash. Those are my glaring 1989 movies I haven't seen. All right, so knowing all those things, I can now share with you my top 100 of um, the 80s. So, number 100 is Flash Gordon. Number 99, I'm just going to go through this. Number 99, Pee-wee's Big Adventure. Actually, I will give one preface. So, let's see. Yeah, basically 91, honestly 90 all the way through 100. I think these are definitely the 10 movies that I think would potentially shift off. Christine, I should probably give more credit for, and I would probably have hang around the 80s. Nah, I don't know. I try to keep Rocky 4 and The Karate Kid as long as possible. Like some of these I try to fight for as I watch more 80s movies and add things on, but these are some of the ones that I do sort of expect to fall off. Certainly these, bottom 6 or 7 or whatever, but um, number 98 is The Evil Dead. Number 97 is Romancing the Stone. Uh, Number 96, it is a 4-star movie and it's below some 3.5 stars. Like I said, it's a really well-made historical biopic, but it's just not as important to me as others, I guess. I have more fun or like some of these other ones better. Time Bandits is next at 95. The Outsiders 94. Rocky 4 is 93. Karate Kid 92. Christine 91. Then we have The Last Unicorn at number 90. We have Rambo First Blood at 89. We have Akira at 88. Superman 2 at 87. Little Shop of Horrors at 86. Witness at 85. Yeah, let's do this. Let's do Videodrome is at 84. An American Tale is at 83. Nightmare on Elm Street 3. Dream Warriors is at 82. Cinema Paradiso is at 81. Pet Cemetery is at 80. Creep Show's at 79. History of the World Part 1 is at 78. And Dark Crystal is at 77. And Full Metal Jacket is at 76. That's my 76. That's my 100 through 76 for the 1980s. All right, let's get the next chunk of 25. We got Terms of Endearment at number 75. Dead Ringers 74. Come and See at 73. Broadcast News at number 72. Mad Max 2. Road Warrior at 71. Planes, Trains, and Automobile. Okay, so this is actually where I'm going to talk a little bit more because this is the string of movies where I'm about to have a few that people would put very much higher on their 80s list, and I don't necessarily. So again, Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, I've only seen once, and I saw it for the first time this last year at Thanksgiving, and I really love it as a comedy, but it's just not one I've rewatched a bunch. It's not. There's a bunch of ones higher up that I've watched a lot more times and are more important to me. That's basically it. I talked about why I'm a little lower on Ghostbusters. And then, but anyway, and then you'll see RoboCop is at 65 as well. That's probably a little glaring for some people. Labyrinth is at 67. Out of Africa is 66. Footloose is at 64. Trading Places is at 63. Big is at 62. 16 Candles is at 61. Back to the Future Part 2 is at 60. Tron is, yes, above Back to the Future Part 2. I'm sorry if that offends people, but I really love Tron. I talked about why. It's 59. A Nightmare on Elm Street is 58. Dirty Dancing is 57. Gremlins is 56. Escape from New York is 55. Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, 54. Pretty in Pink, 53. When Harry Met Sally, 52. And rounding out the, I don't know, the the back 50 is 51. Is The Goonies. All right, let's do the next 25. Um, again, like When Harry Met Sally, probably would be higher up for a lot of people. Maybe even Dirty Dancing, probably Dirty Dancing too. Um, Gremlins maybe slightly higher, or maybe a lot more higher, depending on the person. But I feel okay with that. And then The Goonies, some people would maybe have that in their top 10 of the 80s, but mine's just a little lower. There's a lot of good 80s movies, keep in mind. Number 50, Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure. Number 49 is Three Amigos. 48, Beetlejuice. 47 is Star Trek 4. 46 is 1989 Batman. 45 is Kiki's Delivery Service. 44 is Adventures in Babysitting. Star Trek II Wrath of Khan is 43. Caddyshack is 42. It's pretty, like, you just know how many great 80s movies there are for me, especially too, when Caddyshack is at 42 and not higher. So that maybe says something. Monty Python and the Meaning of Life is 41. I could probably I'm splitting hairs whether I put Caddyshack or Monty Python's Meaning of Life ahead of each other or behind each other, but they're both really good comedies, and probably on another day I would change the order, but it's that is where I would have those. The Fly is at number 40. Amadeus is at as you'll see, we're getting into the 4.5-star movies now. We have The Fly at 4.5. Yeah, anyway, 40. Amadeus at 39. Grave of the Fireflies at 38. American Werewolf in London, 37. Predator at 36. Fox and the Hound at 35. Nausicaa number 34. Fright Night at 33. Do the Right Thing at 32. Uh, Prince of Darkness at 31. Field of Dreams at 30. The Untouchables at 29. Aliens at number 28. Blade Runner at 27. Lethal Weapon at 26. Lethal Weapon 2 at 25. That is a good, like, I love this run of like 24 through 28. Actually, really, yeah. These action movies are awesome. So like the run of Die Hard, Lethal Weapon 2, Lethal Weapon, Blade Runner, Aliens, like what a great like run. And yeah, like some people would have a lot of those higher too, but I just love having the string of them together in this ranking. And certainly the ones I have higher, I do like better. It's just, but I love those movies for sure. My Neighbor Totoro, 23. The Little Mermaid is at 22. Dead Poets Society, 21. The Thing at 20. John Carpenter's The Thing at 20. The Shining at 19. Poltergeist at number 18. The Empire Strikes Back at number 17. I know probably people are throwing something at their computer for not being in the top 10. But again, I explained where it is in Star Wars and yeah, other things. The Never-Ending Story is number 16. I was really fighting over how high to put Never-Ending Story because I love it so much, trying to weigh the like nostalgia value and some of these other movies, because like Terminator is a movie I think is really amazing, and Good Morning Vietnam I think is really amazing. I've definitely seen The Never-Ending Story way more times, both of them, but I just couldn't put it quite above those two. Oh, spoilers. Okay, and then we have Ferris Bueller's Day Off, 13. Raiders of the Lost Ark at number 12, and then Clue at number 11. And then we get to the top 10. Drum roll if you like. I don't care. Number 10, we have E.T. Number 9, we have Beverly Hills Cop. Number 8, we have The Breakfast Club. Number 7, we have Indiana Jones Last Crusade. Number 6, we have Back to the Future. Not quite in my top 5. All right, and then we have the top 5. So we have The Return of the Jedi, number 5, my favorite Star Wars movie. We have Who Framed Roger Rabbit, my favorite Zemeckis movie. Number 4, the Princess Bride at number 3. Airplane at number 2, and yes, I'm sorry everybody, but The Brave Little Toaster is my number 1 movie of the 1980s. I'm not even really that embarrassed, but like I said, I wear a badge of armor of like mentioning this obscure movie so often as one of my favorite movies. So I'm gonna put it number 1 on this list. I love anime movies. I love nostalgia. Like nostalgia movies are definitely very important to me. So I think it's important that I have Brave Little Toaster at number 1. So that's my top 100 of the 80s. We finished. Yay, we got through it. Yes, that was an over 2-hour episode. I'm sorry, everybody. But that's how it goes sometimes when we're doing a lot of rankings. Next week, I think I'll try to be a little bit cleaner. Obviously, won't have extra um, Alfred Hitchcock stuff to housekeeping stuff to do. So we'll be able to get right into the 90s and talk about the rankings for next week. But I hope you guys enjoyed me going through my take on the 80s. Being honest with you guys that even though I do really love the 80s, but apparently I'm not a very good 80s fan. If I am, I'm definitely maybe an imposter with how many things I have missing, and how I couldn't even form a full top 10 list for certain years of the 80s. That was a little embarrassing. So at one point, I was wondering if I should do an 80s list for that reason and push it off for another year to do it, but I really wanted to do an 80s list. I've been wanting to do an 80s list for a long time. And I knew I could at least make a top 100 that was worthwhile. So I'm glad I got to share it with you guys. I hope you liked it. And I hope you tune in next week for the 90s episode with Letterboxding with Commentatory Nerd, Years in Review. And we'll go do the 1990s next week. I hope you guys come back and see it.